Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to another exciting edition of the Black and Gold Hour podcast, a podcast that is themed around the New Orleans Saints and New Orleans Saints news. My name is Mervin, and I am a reporter and a writer on the New Orleans Saints. And today I have someone that has been doing it for a while, putting in work for a long time. I have managing editor, creator, and reporter for @Saints News. And I also have, co-host of the Bayou Blitz, Kyle T. Mosley. Thank you for coming on the show today.
Hey, man. Thank you so much for having me, Mervin. How's everything going?
It's going well. I'm happy to be here, and I'm glad that you're here today. And honestly, when I reached out to you, you were someone that I saw doing exactly what I wanted to do. Less than a year ago, I decided, hey, I want to start writing on sports. And what better to start writing on my favorite team? My father grew up in New Orleans, and he put the love of the black and gold in me, and my family lives in New Orleans. So it was no doubt that I would become a Saints fan, and it was a long time coming when I finally decided, hey, I want to create content themed around the New Orleans Saints, and you're someone that, has been doing it, and I'm really happy to have you on the show and just, hear your thoughts and perspective on the team.
Well, look, man, we kind of have a similar type of background. So basically, I grew up in New Orleans, born and raised in New Orleans, went to my high school in the New Orleans area, but I'm as old as the New Orleans Saints are. So I've been around where we've had terrible, as Charles Barkley would say, terrible teams, right? And now we've have a perennial winner, and the New Orleans Saints. A lot of times people, when I listen to fans and they get discontented about what's happening with the Saints, and they are, I can't believe they lost a game. Man, look, we were just happy if we won 1 or 2 or 3 games in the season. So, but I started as a fan as well. I didn't see any platforms out there that was really blogging, because back then when I first started 15, 16 years ago, it was blogging. That was the new thing. Podcasting hadn't even really been thought of right then. And man, I think it was myself, Canal Street Chronicles guy who started them, and a couple other little guys. We were the only ones out there really doing any blogging, right? And I started with deuceandreggie.com first, and then we also started saintsnews.net, and we just was trying to offer some variety out there, and it kind of evolved from there, Mervin, where not only we started to do the blogging, but then it went into the podcasting. And again, when we started podcasting, it was with Danny Clark. He was a part of the New Orleans Saints. He was a linebacker at that time. And it was terrible as well, man. I mean, the equipment today, where everything's digital, everything was kind of analog, you kind of hooked everything up. You kind of rigged it up, so to speak. So, but we learned, man. We stayed with it, and we stayed true to wanting to deliver, I guess, from a fan's perspective, give our thoughts about what's happening with the Saints, try to get some of the Saints players involved, or some professionals who know the game involved. And we had 5 concurrent shows catering to the Saints and NFL. That was the first of any type of network that was in the Who Dat Nation. So we had Saints News Network, Crescent City Connection. We had the NFL Huddle. We had from the coaches' office, and we had Saints Angels, which was all ladies. So we had all of that going on at the same time, and we just grew, and the websites grew, and here we are today. Sports Illustrated approached us to try to be a partner with us, and here we are being able to give you guys some of the best in Saints news with John Hendricks, Bob Rose, Brendan Borland, myself, and our special contributor, Mike Detillier. So he's always, helping us out in writing. So it's just great. It's fun to be able to do what you do and get the respect from people or your contemporaries in this business.
Right. And I like how you said it's been fun, because I'm sure it's been fun, especially over the Drew Brees, Sean Payton era, writing for the Saints. Actually, I was talking to my uncle about buying tickets, and he's a longtime Saints fan, and he was like, man, you talking about buying tickets and how much this seat costs and all of this and that. He was like, I remember there were days where you could go. If you wanted to get a ticket, you could go right outside, pick it up off the ground. He was like, you're so spoiled in this Drew Brees era. And it's just, going back and doing my history on the Saints and just seeing how they were one of the lower ranked teams in the NFL, and then seeing where they are now. And I think, coming into this season, they got 5 primetime games. So it's like, man, it's crazy. My uncle just tells me, my father tells me, you're so spoiled. You're so spoiled.
You guys just don't know the trials and tribulations we went through as Saints fans. And to be able to have, okay, let's say you're on a primetime game. Let's say we did the primetime games for us was Monday Night Football. It wasn't Sunday Night Football, Thursday Night Football. It was Monday Night Football, Howard Cosell and those guys. We always knew that they would possibly put the Saints against somebody who was going to beat us. So we wanted to just see the Saints do well. It was always probably San Francisco or the Raiders or someone from the New York Giants or somebody like that. But it was, we were fans, man. And I kind of kicked myself because I think I made a mistake. When Reggie Bush was drafted, that's when I started everything, right? With Deuce and Reggie. But I had an opportunity to get season tickets at that time. And nobody was doing any season tickets. You had sports fans here and there. And I was about to purchase those season tickets, didn't do it. Guess what? Reggie gets drafted, no more season tickets. It was sold out from then on. And, 15 years later, look where we are.
Wow. And I remember where I was when not understanding football. I remember my dad was giving me a haircut. We're watching the draft, and he sees Reggie Bush gets drafted. He's running around the house. I don't really know about football at this time. I'm like, who's Reggie Bush? I start watching the highlights. I'm like, oh, okay. And my dad's like, okay, we brought in Drew Brees. And then from there, that's when I started, that 2006 season. So I only knew, overall success for the team. So, and that was the greatest first season to watch, honestly. If you were just becoming a Saints fan and then it just got better, then we, go through the highs and the lows. But, it's been an overall great feeling being a Saints fan over the last 15 years.
Yeah. And I just want to add this one point, man. That season was, even though the Super Bowl season was magical, that season really had Saints fans believing that this team can do more than just be an average team, right? Think about it. They brought in a whole new coaching staff, virtually new players across the board, and they went to the NFC Championship game, right? Look, a lot of people don't remember this. Now people are applauding Drew Brees. Oh, we love him so much. We love Drew Brees. But I remember forums in the rooms at NOLA.com and on Saints Report. Those guys were calling Drew Brees hot garbage because he had a bum arm. Oh, he's going to be terrible. He's not going to be anything. And those same guys who say wasn't going to be anything, but every time he threw a touchdown, right? So it's New Orleans fans are like that. And it's not just New Orleans fans where this is a microcosm of, but it's like that across the NFL. But you got to appreciate what you see and what Sean Payton, Mickey Loomis, and those guys have been able to build in New Orleans.
And I think that if you don't have the appreciation, it's definitely going to come in some form of fashion going into this season. And I kind of want to ask you something that I like to ask and see a lot of Saints fans talk about.
Okay.
It's always important to think about the state of the New Orleans Saints, and everybody has a difference of opinion, but going into this upcoming season, what is your thoughts on the state of the Saints? Are they still a contender? Are they a rebuild team? Is it a lost cause for this season and we're just trying to build for the future? How do you feel about the state of the New Orleans Saints?
No, nothing's a lost cause.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just start with that point. Sean Payton wants to win and win today. It's always about winning in the National Football League. And we have a coach. We're fortunate to have a coach that knows what it takes to try to win, right? You have a guy who comes from the Bill Parcells tree. He's been around some other talented coaches like Andy Reid and those guys. He's a winner, right? Has it been perfect? No. Have they lost some and missed some opportunities? Yes, a lot of opportunities in my opinion. But I think right now, this is going to be one of those years where Sean Payton shows that it wasn't just about Drew Brees. It wasn't just about one person who was legendary, but it's about the whole team that these guys have been able to comprise, right? And they're going to be a winner. Now, it depends upon the play of not only the quarterback. Like a lot of people believe it's just going to be, we can't win with Winston. We can't win with Taysom. Well, when Drew Brees was out, you got a snapshot of that you can win, right? But do I believe that they are Super Bowl ready? I have to still see what's happening because I think there are still a lot of holes, a lot of questions along the defense and offense where we have to, get into those particulars, right? But I'm more concerned about the depth at certain areas than anything else. But when it comes to winning, yes, the Saints can be a winner and can be a playoff team.
And that's what I think too. And I like how you mentioned depth and you mentioned the holes on the team, because I feel like over the last 4 seasons, a big thing with the New Orleans Saints was having quality depth. And when we didn't have it, it showed and most of the time resulted in a loss. So as the Saints kind of dealt with their salary cap issues and the release of Quan Alexander, Janoris Jenkins, and Emmanuel Sanders, players that I really liked, especially Janoris Jenkins, going into the draft has passed now, but going into the draft, what did you think the Saints' biggest concern was?
Yeah, I think the biggest concern had to be cornerback. And now that you listen to some of the post-draft commentary coming from Sean Payton himself, the focus on trying to get a guy like J.C. Horn or Patrick Surtain was real. And that's something that they recognize. We don't know what's going to happen with Marshawn Lattimore. He has some legal situations, or I like to say entanglements, are part of what's happening with him at this time, right? If you look at the video, it's very concerning, right, for the team. So did they address that position? Paulson Adebo, great young, talented young guy from Stanford. I think he's going to have his place on the Saints defense. But if you look at Marshawn, you have Adebo, what's behind? You have Patrick Robinson, you have PJ Williams, right? And then you have a host of undrafted talent. And do we need a veteran? Do we need someone like Richard Sherman or Breland or someone to that nature to be able to come into the locker room and help to stabilize the cornerbacks for the Saints? And I think that has to be addressed. Will it be addressed? I don't know, but from an outsider looking in, that's a major concern.
Exactly. And Janoris Jenkins played really well for the most part. It was almost like that 2017 season when Ken Crawley played exceptionally well as the number 2 corner. But now it's a hole. Before the release of Janoris Jenkins, I was a big advocate for another linebacker. That was like my number one concern, and it was still one of my major concerns going into the draft. But after the release of Janoris Jenkins, I realized, hey, we need something on that other side. They're gonna pick. It's too many wide receivers in the NFC South. You have Ridley, Julio, you have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown. There's just so many weapons that the New Orleans Saints need as much depth on the defensive end, especially in the secondary, as possible.
Right.
But the New Orleans Saints went another route. And with the 28th pick in the first round, the New Orleans Saints selected defensive end Peyton Turner. And everybody was shocked, maybe including Peyton Turner. So what I want to ask you is, what were your thoughts on the pick? How did you personally feel about the first round pick?
Well, I think it's a classic Sean Payton pick.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't want to, people say, oh, Mickey Loomis and Jeff Ireland. No, that's a Sean Payton pick, right? And the Saints have a prototype that they deal with. And it comes from metrics from Bill Parcells, and he thinks about guys along these lines, right? I call it the wish list. The weight, intelligence, speed, and height, right? Sean Payton said this to us after the end of the draft. That's what they were looking at. Guys who fit that category. Now, Ian Book is a little bit outside of that, but Peyton Turner fits those criteria that they laid out. He has the strength, he has the height, he has the weight that's necessary at the defensive end, and he's a very smart young man. People don't realize that. And it's very personable as well. But the thing is, the Saints had to be able to address that area as what's going to happen with Cam Jordan. Trey Henderson is gone. How they're going to move forward is always about their part of their planning as an organization. I wanted them to look at linebacker as well. I'll be honest with you. I thought cornerback Asante Samuel was the guy that was dropping, right? And I didn't know if he fit the model that they were looking at. Shorter guy, but very tenacious, young man. So when they were not able to jump up, be able to make the trades to get the player that they wanted, I thought, okay, they're not going to go cornerback. So, yeah, you have to think linebacker might be the case. Then Mr. Davis from Kentucky goes to Washington. And then you still had Jabril Cox on the board. And then after they selected Peyton Turner and people were like caught off guard, then you wanted to know, okay, you're going to next address the linebacker position, which they did in Pete Warner, right? Pete Warner, we know he comes from a storied program, very good player. Concern for me in looking at Pete, was he a duplication of Alex Anzalone? Think about it. And I saw Pete in the national championship game trailing some of the Alabama players. And you talk about crossing routes and being able to cover tight ends and running backs out of the backfield. That's where Alex Anzalone kind of had some problems against Leonard Fournette in that divisional playoff game. So can Pete do that? Can Pete be like Quan Alexander? And if you look at Quan, and I know Dr. Reef, and I tweet with him and also text him sometimes, right? Dr. Reef said Quan is progressing. He's right on target. Mm-hmm. And yesterday, yesterday he was doing more of his lateral drills, and he still has the speed right now. Mm-hmm. The concern also is he's, an Achilles injury is not something you just automatically say you're going to start from day one. But this is modern medical history where you've seen guys like Terrell Suggs do it. You've seen Sheldon Rankins bounce back from it. But Sheldon Rankins also said he was not totally comfortable in his push-off, right, even though he returned to be able to come back. So I think they need to address that position as well with another veteran if possible.
Yeah, and I think we all saw the Quan video yesterday, and we're like, oh, call him. We need him now, because when Demario Davis and Quan were on the field together, flying, they were all over the place. You know, the pursuit of the ball. It seems like both of them were getting to the ball carrier, 2 and 3 gang tackles. The team just looked a lot more athletic, which is something that I think the Saints went for in this draft, a lot of athletic players. So what I want to ask you, and just to expound on the defense and the defensive end position, how do you think drafting Peyton Turner, what message do you think that sent to Saints fans regarding Marcus Davenport?
Well, the day before they signed Davenport to his 5th-year option, right? I think they're saying, Davenport, you're the future, as well as this young man is the future. I don't know if it's more to Davenport or is it to Cam Jordan? You know, Cam is getting a little bit longer in the tooth. Doesn't mean that Cam can't play, man. You see how he takes on double teams. I guess you look at the contracts, and you mentioned Janoris Jenkins and you mentioned Quan, right? Those guys were released only for the fact of the type of contracts they had and their age as well. Now, I'm not saying right now, the Saints are going to get rid of Jordan. No, that's not what I'm saying. But if you have a team, a rotation with Jordan, Davenport, Peyton Turner, Carl Granderson, Noah Spence, I think you have a pretty good rotation at defensive end right now. Wouldn't you say?
Yes, very, very good.
I don't think it's a message or a slap at Davenport, but it does send a message that they do want to have players to come in that will be able to immediately contribute. Because the Saints are not going to draft anybody in the first round to just sit and wait and develop.
Right. And immediate contribution is what I think the New Orleans Saints have been able to hit on over the whole 15 years, whether it be Marcus Colston, whether it be Zach Strief, Robert Meacham. There's so many draft picks that had immediate impact almost immediately. The Saints were able to find valuable contributions from them. So I want to ask you, and you talked a little bit about Pete Werner and Ian Book and Paulson Adebo. The Saints also drafted Landon Young as well, and Kawan Baker. Out of those draft picks, which one do you think has the best opportunity to make immediate impact?
Well, it's going to be Pete Werner. And I say this because Zach Bond had an opportunity last season behind Anzalone, behind Quan, as well as, we're not getting DeMario off the field, right?
Right.
But it was only until late in the season where you saw more of Zach Bond. Zach Bond is the key, right, in this particular, question. How well will he progress? And Pete Werner, how well will he be able to pick up the playbook? Because I think the Saints have some plans for him to come in and make that immediate impact. Now, if they don't see where he could be able to pick it up in these rookie camps or whatever, I think they're going to probably go a different way. Probably if Quan is available, re-sign him or get another veteran to be able to help them out. But you can't overlook the chemistry that what you mentioned with Davis and Alexander. I don't know if you're going to get the same with Werner, but he's a football guy. He's a smart guy, very instinctual, so I think, right, in my opinion, Werner has the best ability to make an overall impact on this team in 2021.
Right, and I think I like about Werner is when you turn on the tape or you watch the games, you see a guy that I'm a big, advocate for, even at the professional level, being a fundamental guy, tackling, wrapping up, things that are almost non-existent in NFL. So I like to see players wrap up, tackle, though the covering, he might struggle with that. I do believe that he can make an immediate impact. Peyton Turner is kind of how I felt about Marcus Davenport, where it's like it's not that much film on the guy. Who was his competition and everything like that, but he's a big, strong guy that has the qualities that can make him a great defensive end. But the players are heading into OTAs. I think they headed into OTAs last week. So
well, the rookies are this week. OTA coming up.
Right. So I want to ask you, as we start to get into the summer, as the season gets closer and closer, and the draft is now over, if you're part of Saints coaching staff, what's the need that you need to address in free agency?
Oh, okay. We kind of touched on it already. Cornerback, linebacker, and another one that I think a lot of people are kind of overlooking is wide receiver. Now, I like what Jameis is doing with these guys in Miami. He spent some time with route god, that's Mr. James Everett, and his training, right? And he brought in Traquan, he brought in Marquez Callaway, as well as Tony Jones Jr., right? And those guys. So they've been practicing. He's been bonding with them, and Jawan Johnson, been meshing with those guys. The question for the New Orleans Saints going into 2021, who's going to really become the number 2 receiver with Michael Thomas, right? Wasn't that the question last year as well?
The last few years.
And the year before that, right? Because we were like scratching our heads. Why aren't you getting somebody? Why are we staying with Ted Ginn? Why? That's what you heard a lot from fans. The question also is, if that number 2 receiver is already in the building, who's going to be able to be the receiver to take that top off going down the field? Is it Deontay Harris? Is it going to be Marquez Callaway? I need to look at their separation. You go to next gen stats and stuff, you can be able to see how these guys are able to separate. The one thing you like about Callaway, he found the zones pretty quick. He was able to acclimate himself into the Saints rotation pretty quick. I remember I did ask Sean Payton in press conference about training camp. I say, hey, talk to me, sticking with the receivers, tell me about Callaway. And you could tell when he paused, his wheels were already turning and thinking about the kid as well. And he said, I like what we see in him, and the kid made the team, So Mervin, when I think the wide receiver is going to have to be something you look at. The tight end position is another one. I know we have Adam Troutman and a host of other guys, right? So do we have enough skill position players that you can rely on at this time? We shall see. That's the only thing I can say. We shall see.
And I think for fans of the last, especially the last 15 years, it's been very highs and lows when it comes to the Saints offense. It almost felt like, for me, as a Saints fan, I enjoyed watching the defense more. I mean, over the last 2 seasons, I would say the defensive line, I enjoyed watching the defense. You knew it was going to be somewhat consistent, but the offense has been very inconsistent. And whether that's because of Drew Brees is one thing, but I do think the lack of a number 2 receiver was a big part of it. If you get down in the playoffs and you're a defensive coordinator and you're scheming against the Saints, hey, stop Alvin Kamara, stop Michael Thomas. No one else is going to show up. And I feel like Marquez Callaway, like you said, he's found a way to get open, something that a lot of the other receivers kind of struggle with, creating separation consistently. He was able to, get open in the zone to complete those third down conversions. And I like the way Sean Payton is using Deontay Harris. Honestly, I feel like if Deontay Harris wouldn't have got injured in the game, he would have single-handedly beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers by himself. He was a couple of flags, a couple of questionable flags, went against the New Orleans Saints, but Deontay Harris was having a great game up until his injury. So I definitely want to see how he progresses in the offense. But I want to ask you, and I talked to a longtime Tampa Bay Bucks fans. They're kind of some of my best friends, and they'll tell me, look, Jameis is going to give you some great football, but when he doesn't, it's going to hurt. And I want to ask you, how do you feel about what you're seeing out of Jameis, and what do you think he can do as the future quarterback for the Saints?
Well, I think that's a good question, man. Jameis is going to not only be Jameis, but Jameis is going to be a more evolved type of quarterback. That year sitting was humbling. That year when Drew went down and he wasn't inserted into the lineup was also humbling, right? But I also believe how and what he learned from Sean Payton as well as Drew Brees really is going to set the tone for what we see in Jameis Winston this season, right? And if you listen to a lot of his interviews, Drew kind of schooled him on one thing. It's not about making the big play, right? It's about doing your job and getting the ball down the field, right? And you talked about the Saints offense. You think they were kind of lackluster. And they have their explosive plays. Let's be honest about it. They have very few huge plays that you can splash on ESPN. But what they did have was still someone who can guide them down the field, and where you have most teams couldn't have a quarterback to do so. Now, Tom Brady, when he came in, that's Tom Brady. You talking about a 20-year vet. Jameis was just a 5-year vet, right? Tom Brady at that time was 6-time Super Bowl champion. Jameis hasn't even gotten there. But it's just like what the Jets have done for Zach Wilson versus Sam Darnold. Why now you're going to give him the protection? Why didn't you do that in Tampa Bay for Jameis?
Exactly.
You gave the protection for for Brady instead of Jameis. I think Jameis is going to be fine, man. I'm more concerned about how the fans are going to be patient enough to see if this team can win mid-season going down that stretch. That's what I'm more concerned about. That stretch after they're buying week 6, how they're going to handle the Seahawks, the Buccaneers, the Falcons, the Cowboys, the Jets, the Dolphins, and then you have a 4-game stretch at the end of the season where you have to play 3 divisional games and you've got to win those games. You have to come out at least 3-1, I would say, right? So those are some of the things I want to see, how the team starts to bond and respond to Jameis versus, is Jameis a leader and all this other stuff? Everybody has leadership potential, and he has to be a leader. You look at where he was from his days in Pop Warner through high school, college. You're not a national champion if you weren't a leader. You're not a Heisman Trophy winner if you weren't an outstanding player, right? You don't throw for 5,000 yards, which only 7 to 8 other men in the history of the National Football League have done, unless you are an outstanding player.
Right.
Well, what's the other ingredients in his gumbo? We need to understand that. And what spice is left out? Maybe Sean Payton has the ingredient to be able to help put Jameis in that top echelon of players in the National Football League who have played the position at quarterback.
And I think as far as Jameis goes, it's like you said, he's going to be able to, he has an infectious personality. You see him, he was becoming a leader and not even the starting quarterback. He was one of those guys, they're showing him on the highlights before the game, having pre-game banter with the guys. And I think he's going to be able to grab the team. Now it's just grabbing the fans and what our patience is going to be like watching him next season. Something that we really are going to miss with Drew Brees is efficiency. It wasn't large bombs down the field. It hasn't been that way in a long time. But Drew Brees was very efficient. You end the game and
efficient and effective, right?
Exactly.
And that's what I think Drew was trying to teach him. Go ahead.
Right. And you see a Drew Brees stat line, and it might be less than 250 yards, especially towards the end, but it'll be 29 of 32, 28 of 32, 30 of 32 passes. And Jameis coming from Bruce Arians, they're slinging it. They're throwing it all. It's no pass that you can't make. So I think it's just about having that patience. But I did want to ask you something, and I want you to kind of give your thoughts and opinions on the Saints rumor. We know about Aaron Rodgers and his disagreements with the Green Bay Packers front office. And I want to ask you, we're hearing his name with the Broncos, and we're also hearing his name with our Saints. So I want to ask you, is it possible for the New Orleans Saints to get Aaron Rodgers, and what would it take?
So I wrote about that as well. Could the Saints get Aaron Rodgers?
Mm-hmm.
I asked my good friend Mike to tell you about this, and he and I sat down, we talked. Getting Aaron Rodgers will take a lot of money, a lot of capital that you have to give up as a team versus a team like the Broncos, who have 25 million in cap space still available or whatever. A team like the Raiders, who still have modest cap space available. To get Aaron Rodgers, you most likely have to also allocate in between $30 to $40 million in cap money per year. Will that be to the Saints' advantage at this time? That's still challenged cap-wise, right? That's the only concern right there. Now, I know Kai Harley, who is the VP of football administration and does these contract negotiations for the Saints, is fantastic at what he does.
Right.
But man, you have to really write some serious type of languages in this contract to be able to get Rodgers. I think a trade is possibly going to happen before the season.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Packers made a lot of missteps, man. A lot of missteps. But as far as him coming to the Saints, I would give it, I think the odds are, Vegas had the odds at the Saints being the fifth likely team to be able to acquire Rodgers, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if Rodgers wants to come to New Orleans. I think his focus and mine is West Coast, somewhere like that.
Right.
Could it work? Yeah. Think about it. You have one of the best quarterbacks in the history of the league with one of the best coaches and offensive-minded coach in the whole league. Why wouldn't it work? I think it's eventual. I think more teams will be afraid of that package versus a Tom Brady and Bruce Arians package and Byron Leftwich's package. Wouldn't you say? Sean Payton, Aaron Rodgers, come on, man.
That clipboard would be super. Everything would be highlighted. Look, there's nothing that we can't do. Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara. It's exciting to think about, but like you said, you also have to be very realistic. And I think where the Saints stand, do you need to give up that much capital to be successful? I think the Saints are one or two plays away from back-to-back Super Bowls, consistent Super Bowl contenders. So I want to, talk about the Green Bay Packers.
Okay, let me ask you, before we go into your next question, and this is an argument I have had with a lot of people. You said one or two plays away from being in the Super Bowl, right? Were those one or two plays on the offensive side or the defensive side?
I'm going to go, if we're talking about 2018 against the Rams, I'm just start with that one. Offensively, the plays in the red zone were something that I question. they were very questionable plays, especially whether you're trying to score or whether you're trying to take time off the clock. I put a lot of the onus on Sean Payton for the 2018 Rams loss. I felt like once the Roby Coleman hit happened and the defense, we got into overtime and Drew Brees, yes, he threw the interception, but I just felt like we could have handled that in regulation a lot better. So I do blame that one on the offense. Now,
well, timeout, and let me make a counterpoint.
Okay, go ahead.
Was it 32 seconds left in the game?
Right.
Regulation. Why didn't that defense stop them? Why didn't that defense, who was in Goff's face most of the day, do what they need to do? Why did they allow Everett to get out in the zones and help move the ball down the field on two big plays, if I recall, right? So that when you look at why a team loses, I remember back in the 2011 divisional playoffs against San Francisco.
Right.
We can say, Malcolm Jenkins, you were at fault. It was your fault. He was a rookie.
Right.
And he was covering Vernon Davis. I saw it coming off the line. They're going to go to who? Vernon Davis.
Right.
Right? So why didn't Greg Williams call a better plays to be able to help his rookie out against Vernon Davis? Right? Why didn't Dennis Allen, and that's Greg Williams' fault, right? So why didn't Dennis Allen call some better plays to make sure that, again, the tight end victimized the Saints? Greg Jones, is that the guy from, what's the guy from San Francisco? Remember a couple of seasons ago, Saints winning the game, the tight end leaks out, gets the first down on fourth down, right? And runs down the field, and they get the face mask penalty on Marcus Williams. Defense. So if you're going to put the onus on Sean Payton, yeah. Poor clock management, but Drew Brees shouldn't have thrown that ball low to Thomas as well on that first down play.
Exactly.
Marcus, what's my man? Mark Ingram was right there on that rock. Do you know how passionate Mark Ingram was? He was not going to let somebody just tackle him without gaining at least 2 to 3 yards.
Exactly.
Taking time off the clock and be able to have them to spend their timeout. So yeah, play calling as well, but that defense, and in multiple cases, they should have been more vigilant in what they needed to do to stop the opposing teams. And that's just my opinion.
And I want to ask you, since we're talking about playoffs, as a Saints fan, and let's go back to the 2011 against the San Francisco 49ers. That's when I knew I was a Saints fan, because after that game, I went to bed. I didn't watch any other games, and I think that was during the Tim Tebow Mania. I ain't watched none of that. I said, you know what? I'm tired of this. That game ripped my heart out as a Saints fan, and
you haven't seen anything to rip your heart out. That was we were used to that.
It's just like this, and that offense was high flying. Jimmy Graham dunking it. I just remember that season so vividly, and I remember, as you said, my dad's in the kitchen. He calls it. He's like, Vernon Davis, and sure enough, Alex Smith and Vernon Davis connect, and that's how that story ends. But I want to ask you, and that might be your game, but what playoff loss for you was like the most gut-wrenching playoff loss?
That one. That one.
Wow.
The San Francisco one. That was the best offense I have. Okay, this is how I rate it. The 2011 team was 2010-11 team was. They had the best offense ever for the New Orleans Saints. Drew Brees was still in his prime. You had Darren Sproles. You had Jimmy Graham. You had those guys. You still have Marcus Colston. Remember, he scored, was it twice in that game as well? So you had the players. That team should have been a Super Bowl team. Point blank. I just think the defense failed them in that game. And now, Drew Brees wasn't sharp early in the game. Remember, he did throw a couple of interceptions. Pierre Thomas got his bell rung, which should have been a personal foul, right? Hit helmet to helmet on the goal line, so he fumbles the ball when the Saints were going to early lead, or what it looked like. So that was one of the most gut-wrenching, and that was the best playoff game. A lot of people don't give this credit. That was one of the best playoff games ever to be played in the National Football League. Okay, so that one really hurt. The no call would come in second for me because, you were seconds away from really going to the Super Bowl.
Right.
But that team, the way they fought back to get back into the game and position themselves to win that game, to have it lost in less than 19 seconds or something, that's really heartbreaking.
Right. And that game, I try to, if I see a highlight, if I see a picture, I'm scrolling past it because I don't want to see it. It's one of those things where I just want to forget it, that it ever happened, honestly. And then the next year against the Vikings, it didn't really hurt as much because I never quite felt like the Saints had got it all together throughout the 2019 season. And I felt that way kind of a little bit last season. I did feel like the Saints were a much better team last year than they were in 2019. But when Tampa Bay started getting the league, and I think Jared Cook fumbled, we kind of all felt that same feeling of, oh, it's happening again.
Go again. Yeah.
Here we go again. And now we're going into a new season. And the New Orleans Saints have Green Bay as the first game of the season. The schedule was released on Wednesday. So I want to ask you, as we talk about the schedule, how do you feel about the schedule, and what games are you most excited about? I know it's still really early.
Yeah, man, you have to think the schedule is a good schedule, in my opinion. I like it across the board. You could say that the Saints, that last 4 games is some murderous row of games, right? Going to Seattle, we have won in Seattle. Teddy Bridgewater last one in Seattle. We're playing Green Bay. You're playing a Green Bay team. You don't know if you're going to have Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love, or Blake Bortles as quarterback. Mm-hmm. You don't know. You have improved teams. You have Carolina that's going to be improved. You have the Patriots that will be improved. You have the Washington football team. That's not going to be any slouches as well. So I think you look at Philadelphia. Look what they did to us as underdogs last year. You have a Buffalo Bills team. That's going to be one of the best games, I believe, on Thanksgiving. That is going to be one of the best games. Don't sleep on that game, man. Then the Saints have to follow up against the Cowboys the next Thursday night as well. That's going to be also a good game because a lot of these teams, either they're going to be in the contention or they're going to be trying to play spoiler, right? Either way, these games get more amplified and the intensity gets more amplified. So I think you look at them, and then they have to go to New York, and then they have to go to Tampa Bay, and then we play Miami on Monday night. Those are not just easy slouch games that you're going to say they're going to win. So if I have to evaluate the entire schedule, I like the schedule. I think they're going to be very challenging schedules. Can the Saints come out with a 14-game win season out of 17 games? I don't think so, but I believe they still can win at least 12 or 11 of those games. Yeah, and
I asked you that question, but it's not one of my favorite questions because if you're a Saints fan, let's say you put 12, 13 wins on the schedule, and they lose 2 or 3 they were supposed to win. And that's just how the NFL goes. And honestly, I couldn't stand how the NFL would put the divisional games at the end of the season But now I really like it. I like how it's like a fight all the way to the end of the season. And the NFC South is no joke. You never know what Atlanta is going to do. You never know what Carolina is going to do. We already know what the Bucs can do. So it's just about the Saints, finding a way to remain the best in the NFC South. The Bucs got the Super Bowl, but the Saints beat them twice. So
I saw that before. Remember when Tampa Bay won with John Gruden? The Saints beat them twice. Aaron Brooks and those guys beat the Buccaneers twice that season, and the Bucs went on to win the Super Bowl. I saw that was kind of ominous as well, man. So, look, Mervin, I really, if you look at trying to say if the odds or the schedule makers are playing the odds against the Saints, you can't say that. Growing up in New Orleans, we played preseason, then we played a pretty easy schedule in high school, and then you got to your division or your conference team, right? And then that's when you really played some football. Right. You got down to it, and it was really those tight games that you were a part of. I think the NFL is doing great. That's how you want. You want that passion, the intensity to really come out, and you want people tuned in. So I like it. I like it as well.
And we don't know what the Saints are going to do. We know that they're going to be competitive. Sean Payton is going to do his best to put the team in the best position to win. I'm excited to see as the summer moves along, what the Saints add and how the Saints develop as we approach this new era. But I do want to thank you for coming on the show, Mr. Mosley. I really appreciate that. It's good.
What's that? What did you call me? Mr. Who?
Mr. Mosley.
No, man, just call me Kyle. No,
Kyle.
I'm no Mr. Mosley. Nah, that's for your dad. Call your dad.
So, Kyle, thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it, and for me, it's really good to see someone who's putting in the work and willing to help out a young kid just trying to live his dreams. And I really appreciate that, and your inspiration for me, and I'm sure you're inspiration to others as well. So I really thank you for taking time out of your day.
Well, I just want to say thank you it's an honor to be asked to invited to be able to come on board. But Mervin, one thing I would like to just tell you, keep doing what you're doing. You're doing it very well. I applaud you. If there's anything I can do to help out in the future, don't hesitate to ring me, text me, whatever, so I can try to see what I can come up with to be of assistance to you. But learn one thing I had to learn, and one thing I try to instill on my guys is that as a fan, you have to suppress the feelings.
Right.
How you feel about the team. You have to report in a non-biased manner. And you have to be able to play on the professionalism that's expected of you as a journalist. So cover the team, be passionate about what they're doing. Don't openly just bash them for lack of understanding what happened on the field,
right?
But always do it in a way that people are going to respect your work at the end of the day. Okay?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And it's a thing, being a fan of a team and also covering the team as well. It's actually, I love the combination, but it can have those situations where you're like, I know how I feel.
Look, I made that mistake early on in my career where when I didn't like something and I let it all out, and that could come back to bite you. Remember, these guys are human too. Players make mistakes, coaches make mistakes, people in life, we make mistakes. How you handle those mistakes are the important thing. And as a reporter, how you cover them is important as well.
Wow. Thank you so much for that. And thank you once again for coming on the show. But that's it for today's episode. I'll be back later this week to talk New Orleans Saints news. But you all stay safe. Have a great weekend. Peace out.